Have you ever noticed that the more attention you give, the more distant someone becomes? It feels confusing, frustrating, and completely unfair. Most people respond by sending longer messages, seeking reassurance, or trying harder to reconnect. But psychology shows that these actions often create the opposite effect. What if a single text could completely change the dynamic? Not because it's manipulative, but because it triggers something deeply rooted in human psychology: curiosity, autonomy, and emotional investment. In this video, you'll discover 6 powerful principles behind a text that can make an avoidant person stop pulling away and start moving closer. These aren't dating hacks or games. They're psychology-backed strategies that shift the energy, restore your value, and create the conditions for genuine pursuit. One of the biggest mistakes people make when dealing with someone who tends to pull away is believing that more effort will automatically create more connection. It seems logical at first. When communication becomes less frequent, the natural reaction is to send another message, ask if everything is okay, or try to fix whatever feels broken. The problem is that this approach often creates the exact opposite result. The more pressure someone feels, the stronger the urge becomes to create even more distance. This is especially true when a person values independence and personal space. When emotions become intense, repeated messages can feel less like connection and more like an obligation. Even if the intentions are good, the other person may begin to associate communication with pressure rather than comfort. That's why constantly reaching out, asking for reassurance, or demanding explanations rarely produces the response people hope for. Psychology teaches us that human beings naturally appreciate freedom of choice. The moment someone feels pushed toward a decision, a conversation, or a commitment, resistance often appears. This is known as psychological reactance. People instinctively protect their sense of autonomy when they feel it is being threatened. The more someone feels pressured to respond, the more likely they are to delay responding or withdraw completely. This is where creating space becomes incredibly powerful. Space is not punishment. It is not a silent treatment. It is not a strategy designed to make someone jealous or guilty. Genuine space is the ability to step back and allow the other person to experience the relationship without feeling trapped by expectations. It communicates confidence rather than fear. Imagine receiving a short, calm message that says, "No worries, take care." There are no demands hidden inside it. There is no emotional burden attached to it. It doesn't ask for reassurance or force a conversation. Instead, it sends a powerful message: I respect your space, and I'm secure enough not to chase. That kind of energy stands out because it is rare. Most people react to uncertainty by seeking immediate answers. They want clarity right now. They want confirmation right now. But confidence operates differently. Confidence understands that not every silence needs to be filled, and not every distance needs to be closed immediately. Ironically, when pressure disappears, people often feel safer returning on their own. The absence of chasing creates room for curiosity, reflection, and genuine desire. Instead of feeling pursued, they have the freedom to move closer voluntarily. And when someone chooses connection freely rather than out of obligation, that connection becomes much stronger and far more meaningful. The goal is not to make someone miss you through manipulation. The goal is to stop creating conditions that push them further away. Sometimes the strongest message you can send isn't one filled with emotion, explanations, or questions. Sometimes the strongest message is showing that you are comfortable enough to give space, respect boundaries, and continue living your life with confidence. Most people make the mistake of treating communication like a report, where every thought, feeling, and intention needs to be explained in detail. They believe that the more information they provide, the better the outcome will be. But human psychology doesn't always work that way. In fact, one of the strongest forces driving attention and attraction is curiosity. When everything is revealed immediately, there is nothing left for the mind to explore. Interest begins to fade because the mystery has already been solved. Think about how naturally people become focused on things they don't fully understand. An unfinished story, an unanswered question, or a surprising statement can occupy someone's mind for hours. The brain is wired to seek closure. When information is incomplete, the mind continues searching for answers, often revisiting the situation repeatedly until those answers are found. This is why curiosity can be far more powerful than seeking validation. Many messages are designed to get reassurance. They ask questions like, "Do you still care? Why haven't you replied?" Or, "What happened between us?" While these questions may come from a genuine place, they often place emotional pressure on the other person. Instead of creating interest, they create responsibility. The conversation becomes less about connection and more about providing comfort or explanations. Curiosity works differently. It invites attention without demanding it. It creates interest without forcing engagement. A simple message such as, "I realized something interesting today," can be surprisingly effective because it opens a mental loop. It presents information that feels incomplete. The mind naturally wants to know what that realization was. The key is not to use curiosity as a trick. The goal is not manipulation. The goal is to communicate in a way that sparks natural interest rather than seeking constant reassurance. People are generally more drawn toward conversations that feel intriguing and emotionally light than conversations that feel heavy or demanding. Another reason curiosity works so well is that it shifts the focus away from chasing approval. When every message is designed to gain validation, it communicates uncertainty. It subtly suggests that your emotional state depends on the response you receive. But when you share something interesting, exciting, or unexpected without needing immediate feedback, you project confidence. You show that you have experiences, thoughts, and discoveries happening in your own life. Confidence creates attraction because it signals emotional stability. It shows that your world is not standing still while waiting for someone else's attention. Curiosity then becomes a natural extension of that confidence. Instead of asking for investment, you inspire it. People often remember conversations that leave them wanting more. They think about statements that were unexpected. They replay moments that felt intriguing. That's the power of curiosity. It doesn't force someone to engage, it simply gives the mind a reason to stay interested. And in many cases, interest is the first step toward renewed attention, deeper conversation, and a stronger emotional connection. One of the most attractive qualities a person can possess is emotional independence. This doesn't mean becoming cold, detached, or pretending not to care. It means developing the ability to maintain your sense of happiness, confidence, and self-worth, regardless of how much attention or validation you receive from someone else. When people become overly dependent on another person's responses for their emotional stability, it creates a dynamic that often feels heavy and overwhelming. On the other hand, emotional independence creates a sense of freedom that naturally draws people in. Many individuals unknowingly communicate emotional dependence through their actions. They constantly check their phone, analyze every message, worry about delayed replies, and allow their mood to rise or fall based on the amount of attention they receive. While these reactions are understandable, they send a subtle message that their emotional well-being is being controlled by external circumstances. Over time, this can create pressure within the relationship because it feels as though one person is responsible for maintaining the other's emotional balance. People who value personal space are especially sensitive to this kind of pressure. When they sense that someone else's happiness depends heavily on them, they may feel overwhelmed, even if they genuinely care. Instead of feeling closer, they may feel a growing need for distance because they fear losing their own sense of freedom and independence. This is why emotional independence is so powerful. It removes the burden of responsibility from the other person. It communicates that while you appreciate connection, your life does not revolve around it. You are capable of enjoying your day, pursuing your goals, maintaining your friendships, and finding fulfillment regardless of whether a message arrives immediately or not. When someone sends a message from a place of emotional independence, the energy feels completely different. There is no hidden desperation behind the words. There is no urgent need for reassurance. The communication feels relaxed, confident, and genuine. It comes from a person who values connection but does not depend on it for self-worth. Psychologically, confidence is often associated with stability. People tend to trust and respect those who appear comfortable with themselves. When someone demonstrates emotional independence, they send a powerful signal that they have built a life that feels meaningful and rewarding on its own. This creates curiosity because confidence naturally stands out in a world where many people constantly seek approval from others. Another important aspect of emotional independence is that it shifts your focus back to your own growth. Instead of spending hours worrying about another person's actions, you invest that energy into your goals, hobbies, health, and personal development. As a result, you become more fulfilled, more interesting, and more grounded. Ironically, the less your happiness depends on someone else's attention, the more attractive your presence often becomes. People are naturally drawn to those who have their own purpose, their own direction, and their own sense of fulfillment. Emotional independence is not about pushing people away. It is about standing firmly on your own foundation so that any connection that enters your life becomes a choice rather than a necessity. Expand the 4 key point on the 450 words without heading. One of the most misunderstood principles in human psychology is scarcity. The moment people hear the word, they often think about playing games, deliberately ignoring messages, or pretending to be busy in order to create artificial value. But true scarcity has nothing to do with manipulation. It comes from genuinely having a full and meaningful life that does not revolve around constant availability. When something is always available, people tend to take it for granted. This principle can be observed in almost every area of life. Things that are rare, limited, or difficult to obtain are often perceived as more valuable than things that are abundant and constantly accessible. The same psychological principle can influence relationships and personal connections. Many people unintentionally make themselves available at all times. They respond instantly regardless of what they are doing. They rearrange their schedules whenever someone reaches out. They place their own priorities on hold in order to maintain constant communication. While these actions may seem caring and devoted, they can sometimes reduce perceived value because there is no sense of balance. The other person begins to assume that your attention will always be there whenever they want it. The issue is not responsiveness itself. There is nothing wrong with replying quickly when it feels natural. The problem arises when availability becomes a reflection of dependency rather than choice. When someone appears to have no life outside of the relationship, it can create an imbalance that slowly weakens attraction and respect. True scarcity comes from having your own goals, responsibilities, passions, and interests. It means your time has value because it is invested in meaningful activities. You are not unavailable because you are trying to send a message. You are unavailable because your life is genuinely full. There is a significant difference between the two. Psychologically, people tend to appreciate things more when they realize they are not guaranteed. Attention works the same way. When your attention is treated as something valuable rather than something endlessly accessible, it naturally gains importance. Others become more aware of your presence because they understand that your time and energy are being invested intentionally. This is why confidence and scarcity often work together. A confident person does not feel the need to constantly prove their worth through endless availability. They understand that healthy relationships include personal space, individual goals, and independent growth. Their attention becomes meaningful because it is offered freely, not because it is given out of fear of losing connection. Another important aspect of scarcity is self-respect. When you consistently prioritize your own life, you communicate that your needs, ambitions, and happiness matter. This creates a healthier dynamic because it encourages mutual respect rather than emotional dependence. Ironically, many people become more attractive when they stop centering their entire world around one person. They become more interesting because they are actively living, growing, learning, and pursuing meaningful experiences. Their energy changes, their conversations become richer, their confidence becomes more noticeable. The goal is not to create distance for the sake of getting attention. The goal is to build a life so fulfilling that your presence naturally becomes valuable. When your time, energy, and attention are no longer unlimited resources, people often begin to recognize and appreciate their true worth. One of the most powerful yet overlooked communication habits is knowing when to end a conversation. Most people assume that the longer a conversation lasts, the stronger the connection becomes. While meaningful conversations are important, there is a psychological difference between leaving a conversation at its peak and staying until all the energy has disappeared. The way an interaction ends often has a greater impact on memory than many of the words exchanged during it. When people feel anxious about a connection, they often try to keep conversations going for as long as possible. They ask additional questions, even when the discussion has naturally reached its conclusion. They continue texting simply because they fear the silence that follows. The conversation stops being enjoyable and starts becoming an attempt to gain reassurance. Unfortunately, this often has the opposite effect. What began as a positive interaction can slowly turn into something forced and emotionally exhausting. Confident people approach conversations differently. They do not treat every interaction as a rare opportunity that must be stretched indefinitely. They understand that ending a conversation while the mood is still positive creates a stronger impression than continuing until there is nothing left to say. This communicates emotional security. It shows that they enjoy the interaction but are not dependent on it. Psychology offers an interesting explanation for this phenomenon. The human mind tends to remember incomplete experiences more strongly than completed ones. When something feels unfinished, the brain continues to revisit it. This is often referred to as the Zeigarnik effect. An interaction that ends naturally while the energy is still good can leave a lingering sense of curiosity and anticipation. The mind remains engaged because it feels there is more to explore in the future. Think about the difference between two scenarios. In one, a pleasant conversation continues long after its peak. Responses become shorter, enthusiasm fades, and eventually the interaction ends because both people have run out of things to say. In the second scenario, the conversation ends while both people are still engaged and enjoying it. A simple message like, "Glad we talked, have a great day," closes the interaction on a positive note. The emotional experience remains intact instead of slowly fading away. Another reason this approach is effective is that it demonstrates self-control. Many people communicate based on immediate emotions. If they are enjoying the conversation, they continue chasing more of that feeling. However, emotional maturity involves recognizing when something has reached a natural stopping point. Ending the interaction confidently shows that your life continues beyond the conversation. This also prevents communication from becoming predictable. When every interaction follows the same endless pattern, excitement often decreases over time. Leaving a conversation while interest is still high creates anticipation for future interactions. It allows positive emotions to linger rather than become diluted through overexposure. Most importantly, ending a conversation first is not about winning a psychological game. It is not about creating artificial distance or making someone wonder where you went. It is about protecting the quality of the interaction. When conversations consistently end on a positive note, people begin to associate your presence with enjoyable experiences rather than emotional exhaustion. And often, that positive emotional memory is what makes someone genuinely want to reach out again.